of what was going on while they were searching for the active shooter floor. Watch.
I'm in second and lead bay on the 31st floor. I can hear the automatic fire coming from one floor ahead. One floor above us.
I have a gunshot victim at gate 4. Gunshot to the leg. Okay, we can't worry about victims. We need to stop the shooter before we have more victims. Anybody have eyes on this shooter?
So the gunshot victim, the one gunshot to the leg, that was a security guard, and he may be the hero, a big hero in all this, Neil, because when he was shot, he came down the hallway, he approached Stephen Paddock's room, Paddock strafed the door, shot him one time in the leg, and he continued to help police locate that room. When police finally got there, there was no more shooting. It had stopped. So the theory being that he was either looking for a place to escape, or he put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. But that's what the timeline is, and it took another 72 minutes for SWAT to go in the room, and the reason it took so long is because at that point in time it was no longer an active shooter, it was a barricade situation, and when they finally went in, found the suspect on the floor with a gunshot wound to his head.
Any time within that hour, he could have killed himself. They're just not exactly sure when, right?
Anytime within that hour, and the sheriff had said yesterday, surprised all of us, saying he thought that Stephen Paddock was actually trying to escape. He believes that he was looking for a way out, which was surprising to everybody. So any time in that hour, but again, there was no shot. After the security guard caught the bullet in the leg, the shooting stopped. Neil.
Thank you, my friend. Excellent reporting as always. Trace Gallagher in Vegas. All right, Steve Rogers, who is now former member of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. Steve, always good to have you. Here's what also feeds that argument that he actually planned on leaving there alive. He had a car filled with this ammonium nitrate, which is a fertilizer type explosive, could be used for that. It's 1,600 rounds of ammunition. He also had a lot of cases of explosives that you can easily detonate just by shooting at it. So he was planning something else. There was going to be something else to do after this. What do you think of all that?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure in the mind of many investigators, Neil, that he had planned to do something. As the sheriff said, they've concluded he planned to escape. Had he escaped, maybe, just maybe, escaped undetected, some of those hotels that he visited prior to this incident in Las Vegas, he may have gone back there, and we would have had another massive massacre on our hands.
You know, this Chicago scoping out this Lollapalooza event, that's more like pop rock music versus the country music at this venue. That shoots the theory, I'm sorry for the crass pun here, but that he was after a country music crowd then, right? I mean, he was just after crowds in that event.
Well, Neil, I find one thing very attractive that this shooter may have thought to himself would cause mass casualties, those gas tanks. He probably surveyed all of these hotels and said, you know, I could blow the living daylights out of this area. So that's maybe one reason why he picked that venue.
Was there also something to the notion that may let you skip out on a Chicago? Because if he was carrying all these weapons around, let's say he was going to drive or fly, certainly flying with all those weapons would catch people's attention as it would driving that far with him, right?
Well, yeah, we don't know, Neil. It is a bit of a mystery how he got all those weapons into the hotel. But the fact of the matter is, and I would agree with the sheriff, who's done an extraordinary job, there had to be someone else involved, not necessarily in the operation and execution phase, but in the planning stage. And that's what they're going to focus their investigation on, the planning stage. Was anyone else involved? Does anyone else have any knowledge?
All right, so just to be clear, you're saying it's not so much help on the shooting itself, on the attack on that night, but preparing for that. Money had also talked, Steve, about the idea of a 64-year-old guy carting all of this stuff, handling all these weapons. They heat up very fast. They can be very exhausting just to, shoot one after the other. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's one of those, Neil, it's one of those mysteries. You talk to criminal profilers and psychologists, they're all scratching their heads. But no doubt in my mind, and in the mind as the sheriff has concluded, that someone else knows something. And that someone else will bring us to the motive.
Now, a lot we don't know about that hour after the shooting. Let's say we're around 10:20 now, local time. Shooting's over. They don't barge into his room and find him dead in there until about an hour later. all sorts of debate back and forth. Did he kill himself early in the hour right away? Was he surrounded? Did he sense that the end was near? Or did he linger? They heard no noise. They heard nothing to indicate that he was still active in that room. But so much we don't know there. What do you think?
Well, let's talk about what happened during that period of time. The police had to make sure, Neil, that there were no other potential victims. So when they get in that building, they have to protect people, number one. Number two, what's more serious to the police are booby traps. They had no idea if we're dealing with one shooter, two shooters. They had no idea if this guy had IEDs planted in the hallways. So this is why it took them the time necessary in order to get in that room. And, I mean, Neil, you can imagine breaking the door down and a bomb going off. So they had to be absolutely sure that that area was secure before they breached that door.
Yeah, and the guy who was shot at, who was still telling the authorities there, this is the room, this is the guy, and he's bleeding like crazy. Talk about brave. Steve, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Neil.
All right, the city's there, Callan Goodman, on what any of this means right now, this threat or this feeling that he was looking at other sites, locations, and that the body count could have been significantly higher by a factor of 5, 6, even tenfold. After this.
Just a